Hello, I'm Judy, the Armchair Traveler. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to visit Tours, France, a place that does not always make the big travel list, but trust me, it should. It's a city where language, history, and culture all come together in many different ways. Let's start with something you might have heard of. Tours has often been called the capital of spoken French. Why? Because the French spoken here is famously clear, crisp, and neutral. For centuries, if you wanted to learn how to speak proper French without a regional accent, this was the place to do it. Even today, students come from around the world to perfect their French language. You might think of it as the Oxford of France. But Tours is about a lot more. It's also the gateway to the Loire Valley. Picture this: rolling vineyards, winding rivers, some of the most stunning Renaissance castles you'll ever hope to see. From the Chateau de Villandry with its gardens to the Chateau de Chenonceau, which straddles a river, Tours sits right in the middle of this royal playground. No wonder French kings, other nobles, and their mistresses all love spending time here. The Loire Valley was the stage for Renaissance elegance, and Tours was at the heart of it. And then there's also a spiritual side to the city. Tours was once the home of one of the most famous pilgrimage sites in medieval Europe, all thanks to a man named Saint Martin. Back in the 4th century, he became a bishop here, and he was so beloved that his shrine turned the city into a destination for pilgrims across the continent. At one point, it was second only to Rome and Santiago de Compostela as a pilgrimage destination. Imagine thousands of people making their way here on foot, century after century, seeking blessings and miracles. The legacy is still visible today in a beautiful basilica, which we'll visit on our walking tour. So whether you're interested in history, language, castles, wine, or spiritual information, Tour has a little bit of everything. If you enjoy my content, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Now, pour yourself a beverage, kick back, and let's wander together through centuries of French history with me, the Armchair Traveler, as your guide. Before the chateaux, cafés, and college, Tours stood at the very heart of French history. Named for the Celtic Turones, the city grew from a Gallic stronghold into a Roman settlement and later a medieval fortress, one that saw kings, battles, and countless bursts. This was all about location. Two major Roman roads, the Via Agrippa connecting Bordeaux to Paris, and the Via Domitia, which linked Italy all the way to Gaul, crossed here, moving armies and trade alike. The Romans called the area Caesarodunum, or Caesar's Hill, although there's not much of a hill visible today. Even as their empire faded, walls went up, fragments of which still peek out near the cathedral today. In the 4th century, Saint Martin became the bishop here, and suddenly Tours was a pilgrimage hotspot. Monasteries, sacred music, and a spiritual identity bloomed around his influence. Then came 732, when Charles Martel faced off against an advancing Muslim army near Tours. His victory turned the city into a symbol of Christian defense, even if, in reality, the old Roman walls were all the protection it actually had. The real fortress came later. From the 11th through the 13th century, counts and kings built the Chateau de Tours, with towers guarding the bridge over the Loire, a stronghold of royal power. It's not one of the Loire Valley's glittering Renaissance palaces. It tells the city's story in stone. Roman foundations gave way to medieval ramparts, protecting Tours during centuries of conflict between the French kings and the English Plantagenets. Over time, it became a royal lodging, a garrison, even a prison, and today hosts art exhibitions. By the 18th century, the chateau had actually lost its military relevance. Gunpowder made those thick walls obsolete, and the low-lying site discouraged grand Renaissance ambitions. Much of the stone was quarried for other buildings, leaving only the towers and a simple rectangular residence. From the outside, it might look like a sturdy townhouse rather than a fairy tale castle, but that plainness is a part of its charm. Beneath its wall, history layers Roman foundations, medieval power structures, and modern creativity. Unfortunately, modern history has left its mark. In June 1940, bombing and fire ravaged the old town and scarred the chateau once more. After the liberation, the city rebuilt, blending medieval stone with modern life. Today, the towers are alive again, hosting art exhibits from royal outpost to royal fortress, wartime ruin to lively university town. Tours shows how a city built for defense can be almost destroyed and then reinvent itself. Tours' story is one of survival, but if you want to see why it really mattered in politics and power, you have to follow the money, because wealth decided who ruled here and who didn't. Pilgrimage, trade, and royal patronage made Tours a prize. Over the centuries, its wealth passed from bishops to counts, from English kings to the French crown. Early on, bishops held the power. Pilgrims brought offerings to St. Martin's shrine, making Tours one of the richest sees in all of Europe. By the 10th century, that wealth drew the counts of Blois and Anjou into decades of conflict. In 1044, the Angevins took Tours at the Battle of Neuilly. The Angevins rose higher still. Geoffrey Plantagenet's son, Henry II, became King of England, and Tours' resources helped fuel an empire that stretched all the way from Scotland to the Pyrenees. France eventually struck back. In 1204, Philip II Augustus seized Tours from King John, bringing it firmly under royal control. Under the king's control, Tours thrived. Charles VII made this his capital during the Hundred Years' War, with Joan of Arc helping restore his crown. By the Renaissance, Tours was a favored royal residence as the Loire Chateau rose around it. So much of Tours' history followed the money. Pilgrims' offerings, noble rivalries, English empire building, and French royal ambition. Wealth shaped Tours and, through it, the history of Europe. Before the Loire Valley dazzled with Renaissance chateaux, Tours was already shaping Europe's sacred soundtrack. In its abbeys, lit by candles, monks turned scripture into song, chants designed to make the holy words understandable to a population which mostly could not read and write. When St. Martin made Tours a pilgrimage center in the 4th century, music carried belief to the crowds. Hymns and psalms became scripture's voice for the people who could not read. By the 9th century, St. Martin's Abbey was famous for Gregorian chant, calm flowing melodies that felt timeless and still do. Then Tours scribes pushed further, layering their voices into polyphony. To medieval ears, it must have sounded like heaven itself. Composer Guillaume Dufay carried Tours' tradition into the Renaissance, blending chant and harmony into music fit for kings and cathedrals. The echoes remain. From film scores to modern composers like Arvo Part and Eric Whitacre, you could still hear the shimmer of Tours' medieval experiments. This is just a glimpse of the music of Tours. For the full Armchair Traveler investigation, check out the link in the description box below. Born in the 4th century, Martin was a Roman soldier. One freezing night, the story goes, he cut his cloak in two to share with a beggar. Later on, he dreamt of Christ wearing it, saying, "Martin has clothed me." That moment defined Martin's life, compassion above all else. Martin soon left became a monk, and in 371 was chosen as the Bishop of Tours. Though a bishop, he lived simply, traveling the countryside, tearing down pagan shrines, caring for ordinary people, and spreading the good word of Christianity. When he died in 397, pilgrims flocked to his tomb, and Tours became one of Europe's great pilgrimage centers. His legacy of humility and charity spread across Christendom, inspiring churches and towns named after him worldwide. A basilica was first built over his tomb in 471. Rebuilt after fires and Viking raids, it grew into one of Europe's most magnificent churches. Kings and pilgrims came to honor him. But the basilica faced destruction again, sacked by the Protestants in 1562, and finally demolished during the French Revolution. Its stones carted away and sold. Martin's memory could not be erased. In the late 19th century, architect Victor Laloux built the present basilica in what's called Neo-Byzantine style. It was completed in 1924 and still houses the tomb of St. Martin in the crypt, where visitors and pilgrims continue to pay their respects to this day. As you walk through the magnificent nave, however, you might imagine this space dates back to the same period as Notre Dame de Paris, with its soaring arches and intricate details. However, this architectural marvel is actually just about a century old, inviting reflection and reverence in a blend of history and modern craftsmanship. In the early 700s, the Umayyad was unstoppable, sweeping across North Africa, crossing the Pyrenees into Gaul. Their raids threatened to push Islamic rule deeper into Europe. Among their targets was Tours, home of the tomb of St. Martin, one of the most sacred shrines in Christendom. Losing Tours wouldn't just mean losing treasure. It would shake the very spiritual heart of the West. Standing in their way was Charles Martel, the mayor of the palace, the man who held the real power among the Frankish nobles. A shrewd and ruthless commander, he knew that if Tours fell, the Frankish world would collapse. But the Franks had no allies to call on. Rome and Constantinople were too far away and too weak to help. Gaul was on its own. So Martel gathered a disciplined army near Poitiers, drilling them into a wall of shields ready to withstand a cavalry. The clash was brutal. Wave after wave of Umayyad cavalry slammed into the Frankish infantry, but the line held firm. Then, in the thick of battle, the Umayyad commander Abd al-Rahman fell. His men panicked and the great army broke apart. Retreating south, Tours and the Loire Valley were safe. The northern expansion of Muslim forces stopped right here. The victory didn't just save the city. It elevated Charles Martel, laying the foundation for the Carolingian dynasty. Within a few decades, his grandson, known to us as Charlemagne, would build an empire that shaped the destiny of Europe. Poitiers was remembered as the moment when faith, identity, and destiny collided. Tours, with its shrine to St. Martin, stood as a beacon of resilience, a reminder of what was at stake for Christendom. The battle for the soul of France wasn't only about armies. It was about courage, belief, and the making of a nation, with Tours at the crossroad of history. The Cathedral of Tours dominates the city's skyline. It likely was built on the site of the ancient Roman Forum. Saint-Gatien, after whom it is named, is believed to have been a Roman citizen and possibly a soldier. He left military life to spread Christianity in Gaul and became the first bishop of Tours. He established one of the earliest Christian communities here. Although the cathedral honors him, his tomb remains lost to history. In the Roman era, the town forum was central to civic life. By the 4th century CE, early Christians began converting these spaces to churches. The buildings were the sturdiest around, with traces of these foundations still to be found under today's construction. The current cathedral was rebuilt after a catastrophic 12th century fire and reflects a history marked by wars, revolutions, and natural disasters, with each rebuilding adding a new layer of style. The facade you see here shows us intricate Gothic carvings with twin towers dating from the 1500s, blending Gothic and early Renaissance styles together. Nestled on the cathedral's north side, you find the Cloister de la Salette. The name of the place is derived from the Latin word psalterium, which just means a book of hymns. This was a rehearsal space for cathedral singers who could practice outside of the main sanctuary. Inside, 13th century stained glass gives us biblical scenes. The grand nave, with its soaring ribbed vaults, captures the Gothic ideal of height and light. Nearby is a very sad Renaissance tomb of the children of Charles VIII and Anne of Brittany. Out of 7 of their children, only 2, both daughters, survived until adulthood. The delicate marble effigies reflect the fragility of life. Above, a grand organ can fill the cathedral with sound. It's enclosed in a 16th century case that houses later works. Although no specific music was composed for it, the cathedral would have hung with the music of all the Renaissance composers. Through fires, revolutions, and World War II, Saint-Gatien Cathedral has withstood the test of time. The University of Tours is officially known as the Université François Rabelais, a modern center of learning with roots that stretch back for centuries. As early as the 15th and 16th centuries, small colleges and cathedral-linked faculties in Tours taught law, theology, and liberal arts, laying the groundwork for a future university. The university's modern form was officially created in 1969, part of a nationwide expansion of higher education in France. Since then, it's grown into a comprehensive institution, offering programs in science, medicine, humanities, and the social sciences, and driving the cultural and economic life of the region. Today, thousands of students from across France and the world study on multiple campuses. The architecture mixes contemporary facilities with restored historical structures, a visual reminder of Tours' layered academic heritage. Within the university community is the Institut de Langue Française, or ILF, a dedicated program for international students seeking intensive French language study and cultural immersion. To bring the language to life, the ILF organizes regular excursions through Tours and the surrounding Loire Valley, from the Renaissance Chateau to lively markets, to create experiences so students will understand more than just the language. They'll understand why it evolved. From medieval cathedral schools to a modern, internationally connected university, the University of Tours continues to bridge the past and present. Place Plumereau is the beating heart of Tours' historic Old Town, a square whose story stretches back nearly 2,000 years. This plaza sits on the footprint of the Roman Forum and was once the civic and commercial core of ancient Tours. As Roman authority faded, the Forum evolved into a medieval marketplace, serving much the same purpose as it had during the time of the Roman occupation, buzzing with merchants, festivals, and civic gatherings. By the Middle Ages, the square was alive with stalls, guilds, and daily trade, a kind of hub of community life. Today, half-timbered houses and elegant Renaissance townhouses frame the square. Though permanent markets are gone, the Place Plumereau still hosts occasional fairs and events, keeping alive the tradition of commerce and celebration that has defined this space for centuries. Cafes spill out into the cobblestones, and tables are full of laughter and conversation. By day, it's a favorite stop for tourists and normally quite crowded. By night, the square transforms into a kind of social hub where locals gather over drinks and music. The name Place Plumereau honors Charles Plumereau, a municipal councillor of Tours who passed away in 1885 and left a generous chunk of money to the city. While the square itself is, of course, much older, his contribution was commemorated when the city officially renamed the square in his honor. Place Plumereau is more than a postcard scene. It's a living testament to Tours' continuity, from Roman Forum to medieval marketplace to a lively square that welcomes residents and travelers alike. When you hear the words hôtel particulier, don't think of a hotel. In France, this term meant a grand private townhouse built for powerful families in the heart of a city. Think of it as a Renaissance version of a Fifth Avenue mansion in New York City. Urban palaces that signaled wealth and status. Then as now, they often represented arrogant display, frequently by families who acquired their wealth by dubious means and then tried to hide it from the taxman. In Tours, one of these treasures is called the Hôtel Gouin. In the mid-1400s, France emerged from the Hundred Years' War. King Charles VII, nicknamed the Victorious, rebuilt the army and restored finances. Tours buzzed with energy and became a hub for politics and trade. Silk fueled this prosperity. Merchants in Tours grew rich, importing luxury fabric and then selling it, linking France to the Mediterranean trade. But wealth drew scrutiny. Jean Berryer, a rising merchant, faced corruption charges, and none other than Jean de Dunois, the king's half-brother, stepped in and outed him, proving even the richest men weren't beyond the crown's eyes. In this climate, the Hôtel Gouin rose on the Rue de Commerce. It was built by silk merchants and later owned by a banking family. It became a Renaissance jewel. The facade was decorated with sculpted medallions and Italian flair, rivaling the Loire Valley Chateau. But the story actually goes well before the 1400s. Underneath, there are traces of Gallo-Roman ruins, echoes of prosperity from when Tours was Caesaro-Dunum. Fast forward to World War II. Tours was heavily bombed and much of the mansion was destroyed. Only the Renaissance facade endured. It was damaged but still standing. Today, the building is a museum. The courtyard and exhibits let you walk through centuries of history, from Roman roots to Renaissance glory, war scars to renewal. It's more than a mansion. It's a living time capsule of Tours and France itself. The first thing I saw when I arrived in Tours was a bustling main train station, the Gare de Tours. It wasn't just bustling, but it was eye-popping. The first station on this site opened in the mid-1800s during France's industrial expansion. Railways linked Tours to Paris and the wider Loire Valley, fueling commerce, travel, and the rhythms of modern life. By the turn of the century, the city wanted a station that they thought was worthy of its growing importance. Inside, the soaring concourses reflect the optimism and civic pride of France's Third Republic. Each detail, every arch and window, was meant to welcome travelers with a grandeur and a sense of progress. Between 1898 and 1908, Victor Laloux, one of France's leading Beaux-Arts architects, created the station we see today. Laloux believed, like many forward-thinking French architects of his time, that public buildings, especially train stations, should inspire as much as they should serve. He combined monumental classical forms with modern engineering of iron and glass, turning a practical transit hub, which could be quite boring, as modern travelers know, into a civic landmark and one worth looking at and even taking a camera out for. Laloux's legacy expands far beyond Tours. He was responsible for the Gare d'Orsay in Paris, now the famous Musée d'Orsay, and the majestic Tours City Hall. These buildings show the same fusion of classical beauty and modern engineering that made them all a model for architecture worldwide. This is more than just a station. It's a testament to an era when architects believed public spaces could be practical gateways and works of art. Today, the station is still an important hub and serves not just the high-speed trains, but the local and inner-city lines. Shops, cafes, and public spaces integrate it seamlessly into city life, while careful renovations preserve its historical character. The Hôtel de Ville de Tours, or City Hall, rises on the eastern edge of Old Roman City. Unlike quite a few similar civic buildings we've visited earlier, this one wasn't refashioned out of an existing Roman-era basilica or law court. That building has been lost, but archaeological studies reveal that the area once did hold other Roman streets and public buildings, forming a part of the city's civic quarter. The Romans were expert at picking out locations, generally the best available not only in their day, but even today. Over the centuries, the site has hosted a series of municipal buildings. In the medieval and early modern period, city offices were rebuilt or relocated as fires and urban growth reshaped the neighborhood. The current City Hall was commissioned in the late 19th century and built between 1896 and 1904. Victor Laloux, the same architect behind the Gare de Tours and Paris's Gare d'Orsay, designed it in the same gorgeous, to my eye, Beaux-Arts style. Laloux gave the building a balanced stone facade, rich sculptural details, and a prominent clock tower, clear symbols of civic authority and municipal pride. Inside, there are ceremonial halls, meeting rooms, and administrative office. The design reflects the Third Republic's vision of public buildings and spaces that are both functional and visually impressive. Laloux believed that important public should be efficient and beautiful, a principle visible in his projects across France. Today, the Hôtel de Ville continues to serve as Tours' municipal city hall. Thoughtful maintenance and restoration preserve its historic character, making it both a working city hall and an architectural landmark. Tours lies in the middle of the Touraine region, a land that's famous for its food and wines. The city's central market may not look like much from the outside, but inside it is brim full of specialties: meats, cheese, fish, even desserts. One of the food specialties are rillettes, a kind of slow-cooked pork spread that feels a bit like France's answer to pulled pork. There's creamy goat cheese and freshwater fish pulled straight from the Loire River, although I suspect not right here in the center of town. If you have a sweet tooth, and even if you don't, this place could help you develop one. Tours offers a signature indulgence. It's called Nougat de Tours. It's a delicate tart layered with apricot jam and candied fruit, and then topped with almond cream, baked into a kind of crust. Inside, it's soft and absolutely delicious, and something you can eat while you're walking. Spot one in a cafe, or better yet, in a patisserie for just a few coins, and it'll be impossible to resist. Just beyond the city, the vineyards take over the landscape. Sauvignon Blanc shines here, alongside Chenin Blanc in all its styles, from crisp and minerally to absolutely sweet. There's Cabernet Franc Reds from Chinon and Bourgogne, which bring depth and structure, but they're not the most famous of the area. In Tours, you don't just drink the wine, you experience it. You can get it at the market, in bistros, at wine bars. There's always a room, a terrace, a glass, or a plate waiting for you, since this is a university town, if you pace yourself and look, and you can find a delightful spot to sit, sip, munch, sleep, and take in the sights of the region at a bargain price. Be a little curious, and Tours will reward you, one taste at a time. Tours is far more than a destination, it's a gateway. From here, you're perfectly placed to explore the Loire Valley's famous chateaux. But here's the thing, not all of these were the same. They fall into three main types: royal residences, noble estates, and what we might call other chateaux. The styles evolved over time as well. So why did these people settle here? The Loire Valley was fertile, beautiful, and central, close enough to Paris for business, but far enough away to be a peaceful retreat. For the nobles and the rich, settling here meant living close to the king's court while showing off their wealth, power, and taste. The Royal Chateau of Chambord is a showstopper. It was built by King Francis I in the 1500s, but was never meant to be a home. It was a grand, epic hunting lodge. Its turrets and chimneys and ingenious double helix staircase, often linked to Leonardo da Vinci, made it a symbol of France's royal Renaissance prestige. Chambord was less about comfort and more about dazzling the rest of Europe. For the noble estates, few rival Chenonceau, known as the Ladies' Chateau because of the two ladies who fought over it. It was shaped by two powerful women, Diane de Poitiers, who was the king's mistress and to whom the king gave the chateau originally. She built the bridge and the gardens. The other woman was Catherine de Medici, the king's wife, who took over after he died, ousted Diane de Poitiers, and left her own mark on the place. Chenonceau is both graceful and dramatic, a chateau where politics and personal rivalry were written in stone. And then there are other chateaux, often linked to wealth and influence outside the nobility. Amboise, which we'll be visiting next, straddles that line. Initially a fortress, it became a Renaissance showcase under kings like Charles VIII and Francis I. Charles actually died here in 1498 after striking his head. Later on, Francis welcomed Italian artists, even Leonardo da Vinci, who spent his final years nearby and is buried in the chapel of the Chateau. Amboise embodies both royal drama and Renaissance brilliance. As we stroll through the streets of Tours by the Loire River, snippets of its magnificent chateau remind us of the city's rich history. From Roman fortresses to royal redoubts, and now to the splendid palaces of the wealthy, the Loire Valley tells us an epic tale of power and rivalry, revived in many ways by Renaissance creativity. And just like that, we finish up our virtual walk through Tours. Don't forget, there's so much more to explore beyond the cozy hotel rooms and delightful cafes in the city, and there are countless wonders just an hour away by train. Every step here brings us from the medieval past straight to the allure of the Renaissance. The music you hear in the background is from the legendary Lully, one of France's most revered Renaissance composers, echoing the evolution of music from simple church chants to dance music, alongside the change from military redoubts that transformed into captivating pleasure palaces. Join me next time as we dive deeper into the rich tapestry of history, culture, music, and cuisine. Until then, keep traveling, keep exploring, and I'll see you soon, fellow armchair traveler.